My stepmother used to call me Cinderella when she wanted the servants to laugh. Not kindly, not sweetly, not like a fairy tale. She said it while handing me a mop, while pointing at a sink full of dishes, while locking my textbooks in a cabinet and telling me girls like me did not need dreams. "Cinderella," she would say, smiling in her pearl earrings, "the floor won't scrub itself." My stepsisters laughed every time. They laughed when I scrubbed marble floors until my knees bruised. They laughed when I washed their silk blouses by hand because they said machines ruined delicate things. They laughed when I stood outside the dining room in my father's old company sweater, listening to them talk about the inheritance they thought they had stolen from me. My name is Lyra Vale. I was born into Vale Meridian Group, a construction and urban development company my father built from nothing. By the time I was 18, I had become a servant in my own home. By 23, I had become invisible. And by 28, I owned the one company powerful enough to take my father's empire back. My mother died when I was 9. Her name was Marielle, and she smelled like jasmine soap and printer ink because she spent half her life in boardrooms and the other half writing notes in the margins of my school books. She was the first person who taught me that numbers had stories. She would sit beside me at the kitchen table and show me old project maps from my father's company. "This bridge is not concrete, Lyra," she would say. "It is workers, soil, weather, permits, pressure, risk, pride, and promises. Learn to read the promises." When she got sick, my father changed. He still went to work, still wore dark suits, still signed contracts, but something in him folded inward. After the funeral, Vale House became quiet in a way that made every room feel too large. My father, Adrian Vale, loved me. I know that now. But grief made him easy to reach and easier to manipulate. 2 years later, he married Serafina Blackwell. She arrived in our home with 2 daughters, a perfume cloud, and the kind of smile that never touched her eyes. Her daughters were Arabelle and Sienna. Arabelle was 17, beautiful, dramatic, and allergic to effort. Sienna was 15, sharp-tongued, fashionable, and capable of cruelty so casual it almost looked like charm. Serafina told my father she only wanted to bring warmth back into the house. Within 6 months, every warm thing in that house belonged to her. At first, she was careful. She never attacked me when my father could see. She asked small things. Could Lyra help set the table? Could Lyra organize the laundry? Could Lyra let Arabelle use the east bedroom because it had better light? Could Lyra stop talking about university so much because it made Sienna feel pressured? My father was tired. He said, "Just help keep peace, sweetheart." That was the first lesson of my new life. Peace always seemed to cost me something. When I was 16, Serafina told my father I had become arrogant because of my grades. When I was 17, she said boarding school had made me cold. When I was 18, she convinced him I should take a gap year before university to reconnect with family. That gap year became a cage. She hid acceptance letters, canceled interviews, changed passwords, told my father I had lost interest in school. When I protested, she cried. When I showed proof, she said I had forged it. When I begged my father to believe me, he looked at me with exhausted eyes and said, "Lyra, why do you keep making your stepmother the enemy?" I learned then that truth without power is often treated like noise. So I stopped making noise and started collecting truth My father died when I was 21. A sudden heart attack in his office, late at night, with a contract draft open on his desk and my name written in blue ink on a sticky note beside it. I never found out what he meant to tell me. Serafina controlled the funeral. She controlled the guest list. She controlled the flowers, the speeches, the photographs, and the story. At the reception, she wore black lace and accepted sympathy like tribute. Arabelle cried beautifully. Sienna dabbed her eyes whenever someone important looked over. I stood near the back of the chapel holding my father's old fountain pen. No one asked me to speak. 3 weeks later, Serafina called me into the library. On the desk lay a will, not the will I had once seen in my father's safe, not the one that named me primary heir to his voting shares when I turned 25. This will gave Serafina controlling authority over Vale Meridian Group. It gave Arabelle and Sienna trust positions. It gave me a small monthly allowance and the right to remain in Vale House, so long as I contributed reasonably to household maintenance. Household maintenance. That was how my father's alleged final wish turned me into unpaid labor. I said, "This is not his signature." Serafina smiled. "Grief can make people suspicious, I said, "Where is Mr. Calder?" Mr. Calder had been my father's attorney for 15 years. Serafina folded her hands. "Retired." "He is 58? Then perhaps he retired early." Arabelle sat on the window seat, examining her nails. Sienna leaned against the bookshelves and said, "You should be grateful. Mother could have sent you away." Sent me away. From my father's house, from my mother's garden, from the company whose first logo I had watched my father sketch at our kitchen table. I wanted to scream. Instead, I looked at the will, at the spacing, at the witness signatures, at the notary stamp that sat half a centimeter too high compared to every document my father had ever signed. Then I looked at Serafina, and I made the smartest decision of my life. I lowered my eyes. I said, "I understand." Serafina thought she had broken me. She did not understand she had just taught me exactly what to study. From that day on, I became the obedient girl they wanted. I cleaned the house. I cooked breakfast. I arranged Serafina's flowers. I ironed Arabelle's dresses. I steamed Sienna's coats. I answered doors, carried trays, polished silver, and disappeared when guests arrived. They thought obedience meant defeat, but obedience gave me access. I cleaned the study where Serafina kept her private correspondence. I emptied wastebaskets filled with torn notes. I dusted shelves near locked cabinets. I learned the sound of her office drawer when it opened. At night, after they slept, I studied. I used old textbooks my mother had hidden in the attic, free lectures online, scanned law manuals, corporate finance courses, urban planning papers, forensic handwriting articles, probate law, contract law, shareholder rights, construction risk models. I had no classroom, no professor, no diploma, but I had rage, patience, and Wi-Fi that barely reached the attic. Sometimes I fell asleep over my laptop with dish soap still under my nails. Sometimes I woke up at 3 in the morning because Arabelle wanted tea. Sometimes Sienna poured coffee into a sink I had just cleaned and said, "Oops, Cinderella missed a spot." I smiled. I memorized. I waited. The first company I built was not supposed to be a company. It was supposed to be survival money. I began by reviewing small contractor bids anonymously online. Then I corrected municipal project estimates for a retired engineer who posted in professional forums. Then a regional developer hired me under the name L.M. Gray to audit a failed drainage proposal. I found the error in 6 hours. They had underestimated soil saturation risk by 40%. The developer saved millions. I earned $5,000. I cried quietly in the attic because it was the first money I had made that Serafina could not touch. L.M. Gray became Grayline Analytics. Grayline Analytics became Grayline Civic Technologies. I hired 1 remote analyst, then 3, then a retired procurement officer, then a software engineer who could build bidding tools that detected cost manipulation. I never used my real face in public. No interviews, no speaking photos, no founder portraits. The market called me the ghost founder. Serafina called me useless at breakfast. Both statements reached me the same day sometimes. One made me laugh. The other made me work harder. By 26, Grayline had grown into a serious company. We specialized in infrastructure intelligence, contract risk, fraud detection, municipal procurement, and hidden ownership mapping. In other words, we found the places where powerful people buried dirty money under clean words. I was very good at that. After all, I lived with experts. Serafina had turned Vale Meridian Group into a glittering shell. She sold assets quietly, shifted contracts to friends, created consulting payments through companies with names like Northcrest Advisory and Helion Bridge Partners. She treated my father's company like a jewelry box, something to open when she wanted something shiny. Arabelle became the public face of the family foundation. She attended galas, mispronounced donor names, and posted photographs with captions about legacy. Sienna joined Vale Meridian as Creative Strategy Director, which meant she demanded a corner office and changed the logo twice. Meanwhile, contractors stopped being paid on time. Longtime engineers resigned. Warehouse lots were leveraged. My father's old partners stopped visiting. I watched everything from the kitchen, the attic, and the database, and I began building the case that would bring Serafina down. Detective Rowan Mercer entered my life because of a forged invoice. He was not the fairy tale prince type, at least not at first glance. He was a financial crimes detective with tired eyes, expensive restraint, and a family name half the city knew. The Mercers owned hotels, shipping interests, and old money that did not need to shout. Rowan had walked away from the family board at 23 and joined the police academy because, according to gossip, he enjoyed disappointing rich people. I liked that immediately. We met in a municipal records office. I was there under my Grayline identity, reviewing procurement filings linked to Vale Meridian subcontractors. He was there following a money laundering complaint connected to the same shell network. He looked at the file in my hand. I looked at the file in his. He said, "You are not supposed to have that." I said, "Neither are you, unless your warrant is broader than it looks." He smiled. Not charmingly, carefully. "Who are you?" I said, "Someone who knows that Helion Bridge Partners does not exist beyond a mailbox and 3 signatures." His smile disappeared. That was how trust began. Rowan was rich enough to be invited everywhere and stubborn enough to belong nowhere. That made him useful. Arabelle and Sienna both wanted him. Not because they knew him, because women like my stepsisters collected men the way they collected handbags, as proof of value. Rowan attended charity events because his family required public civility. Arabelle tried to drift near him in silk dresses. Sienna sent him messages through mutual acquaintances. Serafina mentioned, loudly, that a Mercer connection would stabilize the next generation. Rowan told me this over coffee one rainy afternoon after we had spent 4 hours comparing Shell Company records. "Your stepsisters are persistent," he said. I stirred my coffee. "They mistake persistence for strategy." He studied me. "And you?" "I mistake patience for mercy less often now." He laughed then, a real laugh. It startled me. For years, men had looked through me, down at me, or past me. Rowan looked directly, not like a rescuer, like an equal who had found another person mapping the same fire. Our relationship was not sudden. It was built in documents, late-night calls, witness timelines, quiet dinners in small restaurants where nobody from either of our worlds went, and long silences that did not demand performance. Rowan never asked why I still lived in Vale House, as if the answer were simple. He understood evidence required proximity. He also understood trauma required time. Once, after Serafina made me serve drinks at a board dinner where Sienna introduced me as our household help, I met Rowan outside the old courthouse with my hands shaking. He did not tell me to calm down. He said, "Do you want me to listen, or do you want the next move?" I said, "Both." So he listened. Then he helped me build the next move. We needed more than suspicion. We needed proof of the forged will, proof of coercion, proof of asset stripping, proof that Serafina had used Vale Meridian funds through shell entities she controlled. And most importantly, we needed them to expose themselves. People like Serafina do not confess when cornered. They confess when they think they are winning. The opportunity came in the form of a gala. Vale Meridian Group's 50th anniversary. Serafina planned it like a coronation. Gold invitations, champagne towers, press photographers, a tribute video to my father that carefully removed my mother from most of the footage and me from almost all of it. Arabelle would announce her new role as foundation chair. Sienna would unveil a strategic modernization initiative. Serafina would present herself as the widow who preserved a great man's legacy. And Rowan Mercer was invited. Of course he was. Arabelle and Sienna spent 2 weeks preparing for him. Arabelle bought a silver dress and practiced a speech about philanthropy. Sienna hired a stylist and told everyone Rowan preferred bold women. Serafina told me to stay upstairs during the main reception. "You may help with the service corridor," she said, adjusting a diamond bracelet. "But do not wander into photographs. Tonight is about family." I looked at her in the mirror. I thought I was family. Her smile sharpened. "Legally, perhaps. Socially. Let's not strain the room." I lowered my eyes. "As you wish." She loved those words. She did not know they were the last obedient words I would ever give her. The night of the gala, Vale House looked like a palace pretending it had no ghosts. White flowers climbed the staircase. Crystal glasses glittered beneath chandeliers. A string quartet played near the French doors. Guests wandered through rooms where I had once scrubbed floors on my knees while my stepsisters stepped over me in heels. I wore a black service dress for the first hour. I carried trays, poured water, avoided photographs, listened. Serafina floated through the room like a queen. Arabelle found Rowan near the donor wall. Sienna arrived 30 seconds later, pretending coincidence. Rowan wore a dark suit and the polite expression he used when rich people bored him. I passed behind them with a tray of champagne. Arabelle said, "Detective Mercer, you must let me show you the private archive. It has all of Adrian Vale's original letters." Sienna said, "Oh, Arabelle, don't be dull. Rowan probably wants to see the executive wing." Rowan glanced at me for half a second. That was the signal. He said, "Actually, I would be interested in the archive." Arabelle lit up and walked straight into the trap. The archive had been my father's private records room. Serafina rarely let anyone inside because she knew old documents were dangerous. Arabelle did not know that. She only knew Rowan was following her. I watched from the corridor camera feed on my phone while standing beside the catering shelves. Rowan asked mild questions. Where were the original incorporation records? Did Adrian keep handwritten letters? Were old legal files preserved? Arabelle, eager to impress, unlocked a cabinet Serafina had told her never to open. Inside were boxes my stepmother had not destroyed because she did not know which documents mattered. My father's real estate memoranda, old attorney correspondence, signature samples, and a folder labeled Draft Testament 2018. My heart stopped when I saw it on the camera. Rowan said, "Is that part of the display?" Arabelle said, "Probably. Mother kept everything." She opened it. There it was. A draft of my father's will naming me heir to controlling shares.